Yo, what's going on everybody? It's FreakyDude99 and welcome back to another Destiny 2 The Final Shape build video. Now this time I have a fantastic Warlock endgame build for you that is sure to absolutely carry your teammates by providing them with enough heavy ammo to absolutely slay through any encounter and any activity you go into. This is certainly an endgame build because the more yellow bars there are in the content, the more you will actually benefit from this build, because of course we are just slaying down enemies with our trace rifles, we're providing all this heavy ammo, and we are getting tons of ability regeneration to activate our Prismatic and just slay out on the battlefield. So of course with all my build videos there's going to be a picture at the end of the video along with a dim link in the description for easy copying. Without further ado, let's jump into the build. Starting out with the subclass, of course we have Prismatic Warlock, which is just insanely powerful, and with the new super Song of Flame. Song of Flame is a really strong solar super that allows us to roam around and absolutely torch any enemies that we come into contact with, including Grandmaster bosses and champions if we wish. Song of Flame is also a solar super, which of course synergizes with one of our fragments, Facet of Purpose, where it makes it so when we pick up an orb of power, depending on our equipped super, we will get a buff, and for solar we get restoration. Restoration is a really strong buff for us as it provides consistent healing no matter if you are receiving damage, and Song of Flame is also just a really good super, so they synergize very well and it works very well for this build. Now moving forward, we are using Phoenix Dive as well, as personally I really like the quickness of this class ability. We can just shoot straight down to the ground, give ourselves and nearby allies cure, and we can keep moving in the battlefield. Especially when you're using Prismatic, you just find a flow and you want to constantly be moving and using your abilities, and having to stay on the ground and pop a healing rift can take a little bit too long sometimes. So having a Phoenix Dive on is also a lower cooldown, which means we're using it more and we're getting more healing actually out of it. Over to our melee, we are using Arcane Needle. Arcane Needle is a really nice Warlock melee as it has the most range out of any melee in the game, with it just going infinitely far. It also unravels targets that we hit, which means we can throw this melee into a group of enemies, take that enemy out, and that will spread unravel to all nearby targets, which just increases all of our dark transcendent damage more. We have a lot of light transcendence energy damage, so having this extra dark transcendence energy, Arcane Needle is really nice, and the fact that it has 3 charges means that we can use it a lot more than we would other melees, and it provides a healthy amount of darkness damage for us to actually capitalize on transcendence more. Moving forward for our grenade, we are using Vortex Grenade, which is a really strong void grenade, as when we throw it out it's going to pull enemies in, but also we are using the fragment Facet of Dominance, which is going to make it so our void grenade weakens targets. So this weakening targets means that we have increased damage on that enemy, and so do all of our allies, and Vortex Grenade is a lingering grenade, which means that it sticks around for a while and each tick of it reapplies that weaken. Not only that, also our Transcendence Grenade, which is Freezing Singularity, is technically a Void Grenade, which means all of the void damage that this applies also applies Weaken, which means it also just gets a huge damage increase because all the stasis damage gets that weaken damage up. So, Freezing Singularity, Vortex Grenade, and Facet of Dominance, a very nice synergy there. Moving forward to our fragments, we are rocking Hellion. Hellion is such a good fragment because we're going to be popping our class ability lots with Phoenix Dive, and this is going to grant us a little solar buddy that is going to shoot out lobs of solar energy, and they're going to scorch and cause ignitions on enemies. Now Hellion applies a healthy amount of scorch, and the damage it does is pretty damn decent. You'll find yourself being surprised with these extra ignition procs going off everywhere, and because our Phoenix Dive energy comes back so quickly, we actually get into a loop of pretty much never having Hellion off, and we always have our little solar buddy going. And then next up we have Feed the Void, which is going to make it so any ability takedown is going to be activating Devour on ourselves, and Devour makes it so whenever we get a takedown we get full health as well as grenade energy. This means that we can throw out more vortex grenades, it means we can throw out more transcendence grenades, and it means we have a lot more survivability because any takedown is just giving us that full health. This also makes it so we just have a much better time surviving in Grandmaster content, as there's many times where an enemy will just be coming at us, going to take us down, and even while we're in Song of Flame or something, we just get one takedown and we're back up to full. Now, that is going to do it for the aspects. Moving on to the fragments, of course we already covered Facet of Purpose and Facet of Dominance, but we are also using Facet of Balance here. So rapidly defeating targets with light damage grants melee energy, and rapidly defeating targets with darkness damage grants grenade energy. This makes it so while we are using Hellion, all that damage is going to be generating energy for our Arcane Needle, and then we can send out our Arcane Needle and all of those unravels to generate grenade energy so we can use our Vortex Grenade and get into this loop of just constant ability regeneration. Next, we also have Facet of Grace, which makes it so defeating targets with kinetic weapons grants you bonus Transcendent Energy, and defeating targets with your super grants you and nearby allies bonus Transcendent Energy. Now, it causing kinetic weapons to grant us bonus Transcendent Energy is really huge because we are going to be using Microcosm, which is a massive amounts of damage on a kinetic weapon, and getting to have Transcendent Energy generated extra on all of those takedowns means that we can just get into our flow easier and quicker. And then as well as we are using Facet of Hope, so while we have an elemental buff, our class ability regenerates more quickly. Again, we have Devour proccing on ourselves as well as Restoration, and we'll have some other buffs along the way. So we are getting our class ability back, we can use Phoenix Dive quicker, and get Hellion in a constant uptime loop. Now, that is going to do it for the subclass. Moving on to the weapons. Now, for our main exotic of choice, we're going to be choosing the heavy exotic trace rifle Microcosm. Microcosm is a kinetic damage trace rifle that deals so much damage to targets, as well as it has the intrinsic trait Paracausal Beam, which causes it to deal bonus damage to enemies with shields, allowing us to take down any shield that we need to and burst their health down immediately after. Not only that, we also have the trait Paracausal Imbuement, which makes it so final blows with this weapon grant bonus super energy, as well as this weapon gains bonus damage once your super expires. With this, we basically are in a constant loop of having Song of Flame up as well as our Transcendence, and I've actually gotten into a bit of a loop in the Grandmaster Nightfalls where I have Transcendence, I use that, I get Song of Flame, use that, and back into Transcendence. With Microcosm, you just get so much super energy from all your takedowns, and along with Cenotaph Mask, we're generating tons of special ammo for ourselves as well as heavy ammo for our allies, meaning that we are more free to actually use special weapons and get the heavy ammo out of actually taking enemies down with them. Microcosm just does absolutely wonders in Grandmaster Nightfalls, as you get a stun off on a champion and pull this out and you will just laser through their health bar on precision hits. Add to that, you throw out your Vortex Grenade for the weaken proc, and they don't stand a chance, as you can pretty much solo champions' health bars with just Microcosm on your own. Now, as much as that is amazing, of course you need some weapons to actually pair alongside it, and you want to make sure that you're covering champions well enough. Of course, we just received anti-barrier sniper rifles, so putting in a sniper rifle in one of your slots is of course going to be helpful, especially because we're generating lots of special ammo from our trace rifle takedowns. Of course, there is solar snipers that are getting buffed and have received these artifact perks, so you have legendary snipers like the Ikelos SR or the Beloved, which can both be crafted. At least for me, there's also a little bit of an incentive to use a kinetic weapon, as we are also using Microcosm. So if you have any kinetic snipers that you really like using, at least for me, I have been using the Last Wish sniper rifle, the Supremacy, with rewind rounds and kinetic tremors. Kinetic tremors makes for a great ad clear when you are focusing on champions and just dumping a whole magazine into them, as well as you can mark targets with your Microcosm and then swap over to your sniper to just ammo dump until you get the special ammo drop from your allies actually taking them down. And then from there, you probably want to make sure that you're rocking just whatever hand cannon or stuff, because you can pretty much cover whatever champions you need to with this build. You have ignitions pretty easy with Hellion, and then you have weaken on your Vortex Grenade, and then you have slow on your Transcendence Grenade, allowing you to deal with overload champions as well. Now of course with this build we are using Cenotaph Mask, so if you want to use any other trace rifles, you absolutely can. If you step into lower end content like the Expert Battlegrounds or something like that, swapping over to a legendary trace rifle is ideal as you're getting tons of special ammo so you can actually mark more targets and not solely rely on your microcosm. If you have other exotic trace rifles like Divinity, that is also super helpful right now as there's tons of hunters rocking Celestial Nighthawk Still Hunt Golden Gun, and that can provide a very easy damage up because Divinity weakens, and it creates a bigger bubble that allows you to get more precision hits off. So Divinity, plenty of hunters will thank you for using that, but of course you have other things like Aegir's Scepter, the Navigator, and just what other legendaries you want to use. This really is just a trace rifle build, so if you want to rock triple trace rifle, you absolutely can do that. Now, that is going to do it for the weapons, moving on to the artifact perks. Starting with the artifact perks, in the first column you grab 3 anti-champion perks to deal with whatever anti-champions you need to deal with. Of course, we want to make sure that we're grabbing Anti-Barrier Sniper Rifle as we are using sniper rifles and taking advantage of that, but we are also grabbing Overload Hand Cannon to deal with Overload champions and Unstoppable Sidearm to deal with Unstoppable champions. We just swap out whatever weapons we need to, but there are plenty of rocket assisted sidearms to allow us to use special ammo from that, and there's a really good hand cannon that just came out called Sightline Survey, and using that with Overload Hand Cannon is really nice. These also grant the legendary weapons that they are associated with the Overcharged Modifier, which is a 25% buff in expert or higher content, and when you are in Grandmaster Nightfalls you want to make sure that you have that buff as you'll really notice that damage not being applied. Now moving over to second column, we're grabbing Overcharged Armory, so weapons with Dealer's Choice, Radial Area Transposer, Collective Purpose, and Sundering Origin traits are always overcharged for those weapons. Very nice to have because there's a ton of weapons that we actually use in that list. As well as we are grabbing Authorized Mod Scavenger, so it reduces the cost of Scavenger mods down to 1, which we do want to actually have this as we are using a Scavenger mod, and we need that lowered energy cost to actually slot it into our build. Moving over to third column, we're grabbing Incendiary Rifle rounds, Solar Sniper Rifle precision hits, Scorch targets. This is really nice because after a number of hits that just causes an ignition, and this is the reason you want to use a solar sniper rifle like Ikelo's sniper rifle or the Beloved. Those are both craftable snipers and they have pretty good ammo economy on them. And then we're also using Elemental Siphon, so rapid final blows with a kinetic weapon or a solar weapon will create an elemental pickup. Having fire sprites spawn around is really nice because of course fire sprites grant us some ability energy when we pick them up. Moving over to fourth column, we're grabbing Void Hegemony, so while we defeat weakened targets, we get ourselves a small Void Overshield. With our Vortex and our Transcendent Grenade, we are weakening enemies, so we can capitalize off that and get some bonus damage resistance and survivability for ourselves. As well as Radiant Orbs, so whenever we pick up an Orb of Power, we're getting ourselves Restoration, and we're getting ourselves Radiant. Very nice to have as Radiant grants us Anti-Barrier on our Microcosm. And then we are also grabbing Solar Fulmination, so our ignitions do increased damage in an increased radius. This is for when we're using our Solar Sniper Rifle to actually cause ignitions, or we are using Hellion. Those combined together cause for really fast ignitions. And then finally in fifth column we're grabbing Shield Crush, so while we have our Void Overshield, our melee recharges faster and deals increased damage, and while we are Radiant we get Grenade recharging faster and dealing increased damage. Just very nice to have, as well as Transference, so we gain increased grenade and melee damage while Transcendent, as well as weapon final blows while Transcendent refund light and dark energy after Transcendence ends. While we are Transcendent, we do get a weapon damage buff, so Microcosm with that weapon damage buff just goes insanely hard and can just nuke down enemies so easily. Now, that is going to do it for the artifact perk. Moving on to the armor mods. Starting out with the helmet, we have our exotic Cenotaph Mask, which comes with the exotic trait High Priority. steadily reloads a portion of your equipped trace rifle's magazine from reserves, and damaging a vehicle, boss, or champion, which are pretty much yellow bars, with a trace rifle marks them as a target. When an ally defeats the marked target, special ammo is generated for us, and heavy ammo is generated for our allies. This allows us to step into pretty much any endgame content and absolutely shred through them, because if our allies are rocking super heavy weapons like rocket launchers, if one of them has a Gjallarhorn and the other has a legendary on, it means we are just generating tons of heavy ammo for them, pretty much allowing for an infinite loop of every champion you run into. You can burst down with heavy ammo and get heavy ammo back to burst down the next champion. Cenotaph Mask is just an absolute fantastic exotic for Warlocks, as it allows you to just be an ultimate support to your teammates, as any champion or any activity, anything you go into that has champions and yellow bars, your teammates will be grateful, because having that heavy ammo drop for them is going to be tons more damage for your actual team, and then having the special ammo drop for you means that you can actually use double specials if you want. You can use something like the Call alongside something like Ikelo's sniper rifle and have just double special going with Microcosm, and Microcosm just generating tons of special ammo for you by marking all these yellow bars. Cenotaph Mask is just such a good exotic, and again, if you haven't tried it out, you really should, because it's a lot of fun to actually just get into this loop of getting special ammo back and generating heavy ammo for your allies. Because man, once you get into the loop, they just start firing off rockets and obliterate anything you come into. Being able to just be at max heavy ammo throughout an entire activity like a Grandmaster Nightfall is just such a blessing for you and your allies, and it makes it that much easier clearing them and farming them. Now, moving over to the Armour Mods, we're grabbing Heavy Ammo Finder, so we have increased drop chance on heavy ammo upon defeating targets. This makes it so actually primary weapon final blows help us find ammo more quickly, but this means that when we are using double special, that we are not actually benefiting from this. So, if you are using double special ammo or something like that, maybe swap over to something like a Font of Wisdom so you get a plus 30 in intellect while you have an armor charge to allow for quicker super uses. But if you are in something like a Grandmaster Nightfall where you are using a primary weapon, then make sure you have Heavy Ammo Finder on so you actually get the Microcosm ammo that you need. And then we're using Ashes to Assets, so we gain bonus super energy on grenade takedowns. Our Vortex grenade and our Transcendence grenade goes absolutely crazy in takedown, so this is really nice to have as we get more super uses. And then we are using Kinetic Siphon, so rapid kinetic weapon final blows create orbs of power. We are just tearing through enemies with Microcosm and with whatever kinetic weapon we're using, so this benefits us heavily. Now, touching on the actual stat focusing here, we want to make sure that we are first focusing Resilience, as Resilience at 100 grants us 30% damage reduction, which is absolutely vital in endgame content, especially Grandmaster Nightfalls, where not having that 30% damage resistance can be the difference between you surviving and you being one-shot. So, focusing Resilience for 100 is what we want to do first and foremost. Secondly, we want to focus Discipline. Getting Discipline as high as possible means we can throw out more Vortex grenades, apply more weaken procs, and get that energy that we need to actually go Transcendent and throw out our Transcendence grenades. Discipline also affects how quickly we can throw out Transcendent grenades, so of course having higher Discipline means that we can throw more of them out, get more weaken, and get more damage off. And then thirdly, you want to make sure that you are focusing Recovery. Now, recovery, of course, is super important because having your recovery high means that you can use your class ability more, and it means that your health actually regenerates faster, so you don't have to wait as long before jumping back into the action. Down to the gauntlets, we are grabbing Impact Induction, so causing damage with a powered melee attack reduces grenade cooldown, as well as we're using Focusing Strike, so grants class ability energy when we cause damage with our powered melee attack. We get Arcane Needle back super quickly with this build because of all of our light damage, so actually using this for Focusing Strike and Impact Induction is helpful, as it means we get our Phoenix Dive, we get our grenade back quickly, and we don't need to worry about using something like Momentum Transfer or Bolstering Detonation because we get our melee back much quicker than our grenade in most cases. but we are also using firepower here because our grenades do that much more damage, so being able to generate orbs of power is really nice to have because again, we are just getting tons of grenade takedowns, especially when we go transcendent. Down to the chest piece, we are grabbing double elemental resistance mods to match whatever the current threat modifier is. This means that if it is a void threat on the activity you're going into, you want to make sure you are grabbing double void resistance and then a third elemental resistance to round out all of your damage resistances in the activity. Putting on 3 can be sometimes useful, but in most cases you want to put on 2 and then a third one to actually round out the damage that you are facing. As in most recent content, there is multiple different enemy factions and you are being hit by a lot of different damage types. So for something like the Grandmaster Nightfall, if it is arc threat, you put on double arc resistance, and then for the third resistance, you put on something like Void if you have trouble with Shriekers or Ogres, or something like Solar if you have trouble with shrapnel cannons and stuff like that. Down to the leg armor, we are grabbing double kinetic weapon surge, so we have a 17% increase to our kinetic weapon damage while we have an armor charge active. This is really huge because of course Microcosm receives this buff and it just absolutely goes more insane than it already does, and then this stacked with our Transcendence actually active, granting us our weapon damage increase, means that we just have so much damage that we can just laser down any enemy that comes in front of us. Add to that, we are using Kinetic Scavenger, so any ammo that we pick up is granting bonus ammo to our kinetic weapons. This means that we can use Microcosm a lot more because we're getting more ammo for it, and whatever kinetic weapon that we're using, if it's a special sniper, then we are getting more ammo for that as well. This is more incentive to also use a kinetic sniper because you actually get better ammo economy on it, but if you use a solar sniper, then you get those ignition procs, so it's really up to you and what you want to do there. And down to the class item, finally we are grabbing Bomber, so whenever we use our Phoenix Dive, we're getting a little bit of extra grenade energy back. And then we are grabbing double Font of Restoration, so while we have an armor charge, we are getting plus 50 to our recovery while we have that armor charge active. Again, this is really nice to have, but if your recovery is high enough, then you may not need double Font of Restoration, because if it is 60 or above, you are actually overfilling your recovery and not receiving that further benefit. So if you have a recovery that is 60 or higher, then go down to 1 Font of Restoration and swap over to double Bomber. This means that you'll just get more grenade energy back when you use your Phoenix Dive and you'll be in a much better flow. But for those that have low recovery, do double Font of Restoration. And that is gonna do it for the build. Now, this build has certainly just been an absolute fun one, but it's definitely been a different build than some of my other ones. This build is a lot less focused on just pure raw damage, and instead focused on targeting those champions, targeting those yellow bars, making sure your marks go off, and your enemies are actually going down as your allies take them down. Because again, if you take down the enemies that you have marked, you're not actually getting the ammo drops from them. So, calling out to your teammates, calling out to your allies that you have marked a target or a champion, and then you swap over to your sniper rifle to just get extra damage off, is hugely helpful, especially if you consistently stun a champion and allow your allies to just get that takedown on them. So, getting into this loop of using Microcosm to just laser enemies until they're low and then leave them for the final finisher from your allies is something you want to get into. It can definitely be tough in Grandmaster Nightfalls where one slip up can mean a total party wipeout, but if you actually get into the rhythm, you use Microcosm in your Transcendence, then you'll find you can actually slow the targets you need, get those stuns off, target them with Microcosm, swap over to your sniper, unload a full magazine into them, and at that point they should be down. If they're up at after that, then you just swap back to Microcosm and laser them if you need be. Again, Microcosm is just such a good exotic trace rifle, and it can be a little bit difficult depending on what build you're using, but if you're using something like Cenotaph, it means that you're just meant to use a trace rifle and you can use anything else you want from there. This means you also can run a triple trace rifle build if you want, because Microcosm is now filling that heavy slot, allowing you to use something like Acacia's Dejection in the energy slot and Appetence in the kinetic slot. It's just such a fun build, and I've just had so much fun using it in Grandmaster Nightfalls, as being able to have just infinite special ammo for ourselves and heavy ammo for our allies means that in some situations you can go double specials in endgame content again, as you have stuff like special ammo sidearms that you can use alongside your sniper rifle. Of course, if you need a picture of this build, there's going to be one on screen along with that dim link in the description for easy copying. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like on it and leave a comment if you have anything to say. I love responding to everything that you say down there, and it's always a great time talking with any of you that make some suggestions about different weapons to use or things to try out. It's just really fun to just put a build out there and see what you guys think and just collaborate and make it even better. So I love talking with you guys down in the comments, and if you like my videos and you want to see more, be sure to hit that subscribe button to stay tuned in, as I have tons of build videos launching with Final Shapes drop, and as the acts progress and we get deeper into these episodes, just more and more builds become usable as we get those more artifact perks. It's just such a fun time playing Destiny 2 right now, and I just love making videos. So thank you everybody so much for watching. I have been FreakyDude99, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.